All right, we are live, and I've got to fix the problem with my. Yeah, we'll just turn the. Well, I'll just turn the speakers off completely. To anybody that joins this early, of course, not looking at chat, I do have to, however, actually connect to the video to see chat and mute it, obviously. Oh, now I'm looking at myself. How lovely. Moderators, yeah, I always get that crap. Yeah. Um, just as God, I hate this. I hate the format of this. I also hate how I've got two tabs open. And I see Bobby Jones is already there. You can just ignore him. He dedicated troll of the channel. He's the only one who's allowed to do that, by the way. Specifically, I've known him for years. He's Spud Croyley. You should have seen what he had to say about Romney, Obama, and so forth. My analysis of the debate, to sum it up, Trump prevailed. He did what he needed to do, which is specifically not take Clinton's bait and look like a total asshat. That's step number one. And I'm still looking at myself here, and I really don't want to. I'm actually going to put this in full screen, while at the same time decimating her on several things, specifically TPP matters, but that was already stated in the last debate. So while it's a good hit, it's not quite as substantial as before. The big thing, though, was WikiLeaks, pay to play, and so forth. And Clinton actually stumbled on trying to concoct the conspiracy theory that it was Russia all the way down, which that's really what hurts her. And this Trump knows this, obviously. That's why he brought it up. Oddly enough, it was the moderator who first brought up sort of the WikiLeaks stuff. The other thing, she actually didn't even deliver an answer when asked about the pay-to-play sort of scandal embroiling her foundation. She never really answered the query on sort of what had gone on with the FBI in regards to her emails. These are perennial issues at this point. It was wise of Trump to bring up, by the way, and this was probably the heaviest hitting part of what he said all night. He was very wise to bring up specifically Chicago, specifically the riots there, and O'Keefe's work. It was very wise of him to do that. Because right now, millions of people who otherwise, they probably haven't seen O'Keefe's video, they're Googling it right now. What do you think they see? It doesn't matter what the mainstream media, the legacy media reports on it, because they're Googling it for themselves, including people who are maybe less politically aware, maybe less politically inclined. Trump's big stumble of the night came at the moment that he didn't make it immediately and totally clear that he would respect the results of the election. He brushed it off in a joking aside as, oh, well, I'll keep you in suspense. That perhaps isn't going to go over well with certain groups of people, but I think his idea at this point may be primarily to attack Hillary so much that undecided voters that remain will never vote for her, while hardening his own support as much as possible in the hopes that higher turnout alone, even if he goes into November behind, is capable of driving a Trump win. He may actually be right there. We don't have a solid metric on what will or will not happen. Now, to anyone who's watching right now, I'm not in chat right now. I'm not paying attention to people's comments. I've got some notes, very few for this debate. A lot of it was essentially Clinton and or Trump talking about policy. Well, that's boring. It's the jabs that we want. It's the crossfire there that really drives public opinion, because that's what people are going to Google. That's the juicy sound bites that will be on every legacy media network. That's what people care about. They may, in a secondhand manner, they'll analyze their plans. But did either of them, by the way, I'll point this out again, like I did at the second debate. Neither Trump nor Clinton has a cast in stone, die-hard plan that will be stuck to from A to Z. It's impossible for them to concoct such a plan. They don't know what the economic situation will be for the next 4 years. They don't know exactly. No PhD in economics knows exactly how any specific plan is specifically going to affect every part of the economy. It's impossible for them to know. If it were an exact science, there wouldn't be different schools of economics. Nobody cares about this issue. I think that another real win for Trump is his opponent is proclaiming she wants to raise taxes. Now, she claims it's only on people that are upper income. Trump, once again, the one thing I think that he should have done is say, well, why are you constantly talking about people in that bracket not paying their fair share when many of these people are already under huge stress? They're small business owners or maybe a doctor or something like that. He could gobble up segments of that voting base that largely people in that specific bracket, the professionals, the higher level college professors, they're largely in Clinton's pocket. But people vote with their wallet first and foremost. He could have taken advantage of that situation. He chose not to, in favor of talking about her emails, which is a little bit of a tired issue. For me, honestly, I don't, at this point, it's been made abundantly clear. Yeah, she lied to Congress. She lied to the FBI. She should be in prison, but she's not actually going to go there. The only ray of hope for people on this issue is that Cernovich says that the 33,000 emails have been recovered and they'll be dumped at some point. We don't know whether that's going to be the case or not. But I'll go through some of my notes here. On the very first segment, I will say this, so people don't think that I'm far right, a conservative. I'm not a conservative, a Republican partisan. I will say I deeply disagree with what Trump said regarding abortion. I have no problem with abortion. I don't care about late-term abortion. I really don't. I don't see it as a moral issue. I see it from a libertarian perspective. I see it as there can be whatever debate you want to have over whether a fetus is a citizen or has rights or whatever. There's no debate over whether the adult woman has rights. However, here's what I've said all along. Take a look at what he said really, really closely. Dive a little bit deeper than the surface into what Trump says. Sometimes you get a different reading of what he's actually talking about. He never once, when questioned on this, answered in the affirmative that, yes, I'm going to stack the court with people who will end abortion. He said it'll go back to the states. Trump does not care about the issue of abortion. In fact, if it came down to it, I think he would defend the right for abortion. I don't think he's against abortion at all. This is clearly, he didn't want on a debate stage where a lot of his evangelical fans are watching to say, oh yeah, I don't really give a crap about this issue. He said it back in the 1990s, though. He also said the same about gay marriage. They didn't question him about that tonight, but of course in the first debate they did. Oh, well, I'm for traditional marriage. It's not what you said in the 90s, Mr. Trump. I can see through this. It is pandering. It is dishonest. He doesn't care about these issues. That's why he never answered in the affirmative, so that nobody could catch him up in the fact that, oh, well, decades ago you said that you had no problem specifically with abortion. Late-term abortion, yeah, that's probably his view. That's most of Americans. But I will say this. Pandering to that demographic is great for him because ultimately, even though oddly enough, as though it may sound, I agree more closely with what Hillary Clinton said on abortion and in fact would consider her to be somewhat right-leaning on some similar issues. Ultimately, I'm in the minority in the United States. The majority of people now, for the first time in several decades, actually oppose many abortion-related things. Not necessarily abortion as a total, but almost all of them believe in it. If someone's raped or the mother's life is in danger or there's incest, it's almost universally supported. But as far as on-demand abortion, even before 5 months, I'm actually in the minority supporting that. I understand that, and I don't have a problem with that. I take a libertarian perspective. I don't think the government should have anything to do with it. I was surprised that Trump didn't jump down her throat, though, when she said, well, the government has no business making these decisions for people. But Clinton thinks that the government should decide what you can arm yourself with, in her own words, what you can and can't say if it offends somebody, and all of these other things. He should have jumped down her throat. He had an opportunity. That was one of 2 missed opportunities. But he did a lot better at following through when he did take the opportunity to attack her. That's why I give him the advantage in this debate more than the last one. In the last debate, it was a little bit too chaotic. It was sort of helter-skelter. He got in some good attacks. He got some follow-throughs. The first debate was boring. Nobody really cares about the first debate at this point. Second debate was so frenetic, it was difficult for anybody to land a hit. In this debate, he was much more measured. His ability to withstand Clinton's little jabs allowed him to deliver much more effectively. That's what gives him the advantage here. He also pointed out, and I can bet this is something people are Googling quite heavily at the moment, Clinton wanted the wall. It's actually true. Of course, the Clintonians did want to build a comprehensive border wall. Bill Clinton, there's a tape of him saying almost exactly the same things Trump is saying now on immigration, getting a standing ovation from the Democrats in the House and Senate. It's actually almost surreal because the Democratic Party has shifted on this issue. Public consciousness hasn't. The Republican Party largely hasn't, other than some neocons that they want an open border too. And another big hit he got in, this is the third big hit of the night, hemispheric open border situation. Clinton attempted and I think completely and utterly failed to deflect this issue. She tried to make out as though within context it was somehow about energy futures, that it was about power grids. Does anybody really believe that that's what she was talking about in the Podesta email referencing open borders? No, because if you read the email, that's not what she was talking about. That's one very small part of it. She does want one common power grid across the Americas. How can this be accomplished exactly without essentially TPP on steroids and an open border situation? It can't be. Well, there's your problem. There's your context. It doesn't get more cut and dry than that. So her lie on that is going to cost her because nobody, including many of her fans, is going to believe that deflection. He then got in a little bit of a jab when she got off on a tangent when asked a second time specifically regarding being for hemispheric open borders or something to that general effect. She attempted to change essentially what they were talking about. And Trump said, this is a quote, "That was a great pivot off the fact that she wants open borders. That hammers it home. Public consciousness increases. You got to hammer the message home a second time. You've got to get it in a second time. That really reinforces people's interest in it, as opposed to letting it go, letting your opponent meander off into some totally different subject so that people get sort of hypnotized, honestly, when they're watching and they forget all about what was actually said before, which is what was damaging to Clinton. What she was talking about thereafter was just a boring spiel. Nobody cared. They started tuning it out. Trump brought it back to people's attention, and it works. I'm sure Scott Adams will probably be mentioning it on his blog tonight or tomorrow. It was also funny when he talked about Clinton being ineffective, and this was the two main strategies. Trump all night long was casting Clinton as ineffective, saying she and Obama, they were fooled by Putin, fooled by Assad, fooled by the Iranians, had years to fix these problems, never did, could have fixed the tax code that she was talking about Trump taking advantage of and never did it. That was his basic line. Clinton's was less effective, I think, and that was women, basically. Trump doesn't like women. Trump gropes women. Trump does whatever with women. Trump calls them pigs or whatever. Anybody who cares about that fact has already decided not to vote for Trump. It was a waste of her time, and I don't know what she was thinking. Trump, meanwhile, has already gotten some degree of confirmation that, indeed, many Americans are deeply troubled about the fact that Clinton has been involved in politics and hasn't applied herself to fixing these things. She then gets off on a tangent and talks about how great the Clinton Foundation is about AIDS or whatever, dispensing AIDS drugs, and then Trump counters with Haiti, which is a sore issue. The former president of the Senate of Haiti, not the former president of Haiti, and people conflate the two for some unknown reason. I get people all the time like, oh, the former president of Haiti is talking about how great Trump is and how Clinton screwed them. He's never their president. He was the former president of the Senate of Haiti. You got to keep that in mind, because otherwise people say, oh, well, claim is completely false, pants on fire, sort of the selective fact-checking thing. The Haitian immigrant population in the United States, important within Florida specifically, parts of Miami region, detests the Clintons. And it is true. They appear not to generally like the Clintons because the Clinton Foundation defrauded their nation. And so any talk about fraud, oh, the Trump Foundation spent however much on a portrait of Trump, which is debatable. It's not exactly clear, I guess. It sort of falls by the wayside. You're talking about defrauding a nation whose population has been almost entirely displaced by natural disaster. I think you see which argument perhaps is stronger on this issue. For anyone just joining, a couple more notes. I'm not looking at chat right now. I don't even know how many people are connected at the moment because I've got it all blanked out. I've got my notes in front of me. I've got to I got to analyze before you discuss. Also, I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but around 9:55 p.m. Eastern time, of course, it looked like Clinton got a little bit wonky. Uh, she, she looked a little bit unsteady and started talking with a halt in her voice, as in her accent and affect actually changed rather dramatically for about 5 minutes there. I don't know. I noticed this because I've sort of studied these things before. I don't know if anybody else did, honestly. The average person watching, maybe they didn't see anything strange. I don't think it was specifically like a health breakdown, because then 5 minutes later she was talking like she was before. It was a little bit odd to me. At first, I thought she looked a little bit unsteady. And I was like, oh, is this going to be the big moment she ends up literally fainting during a live streamed debate? That obviously didn't happen. He then challenged her to give back all the cash that the Saudis had given to the Clinton Foundation. And once again, she never answered him. She never answered the question regarding Saudi or Qatari donations to the Clinton Foundation, which is funny. This is actually an effective angle of attack as far as female voters, because what do we know about the Saudi and Qatari regimes? If you're raped in Saudi Arabia and you say, well, I was raped, you're the one that gets killed or at the very least tortured and imprisoned, unless you can bring forth, I think it's 4 male witnesses to say that, to corroborate your story. It's ridiculous. It's subhuman, honestly, the way in which the so-called justice system works. In a theocracy, Clinton takes money from these people. And there is a case to be made, and this is what Trump was talking about, that anything he said in the past which was off color regarding women pales in comparison to what some of Hillary's friends and donors do up until this day. I happen to agree with that general sentiment too. And the other big important thing Trump did all night was cast himself. I'm not a politician. My opponent is. She's got a lot of experience. And he doubled down on what he said in the last debate. Yes, you've got a lot of experience, and I admit that, but it's bad experience. And that's a good line of attack. This is probably his most effective line so far in the entire campaign, because it both casts his opponent as a career politician and one that's ineffective at the same time. It rolls it up nicely into a nice little statement. Very easy to remember and very easy to spread around as a meme, which is obviously in this election quite important. He also talked about the attack on Mosul and the element of surprise and how Patton and so forth must be rolling in their graves. You've heard this from Trump too. I think it was at the first debate he first brought that up. Not as effective, because a lot of younger voters don't know who Patton is. Honestly, unless a person has at least a rudimentary knowledge of U.S. history, they probably know nothing about that period of time. It's sad. It shouldn't be that way, but let's be honest here. That's true. In fact, many people from older generations basically just skipped class and went out to smoke a doobie or something like that. So they don't care what Patton has to say about military strategy. Again, roughly agree with him on this issue. I do think it's rather strange that we're announcing our attacks long beforehand, when the sole goal of the attack supposedly is to get high-profile individuals. You'd think you'd want to surprise them and corner them. Apparently, that's not actually what we do. And the reason is clear. The U.S. is not fighting ISIS. I say that unequivocally. Anytime we're bombing ISIS, it's because we want the FSA to take over an area. We want the hardline Islamo-fascist nationalists of Syria to run Syria. Not Assad, we're not stumping for ISIS, but we're not focused on them. We're focused on attacking Assad's forces. This is the reason Russia and Iran right now are involved. I was slightly surprised that Trump didn't say something to the effect of Hillary Clinton will start World War III if she does what she wants to do in Syria. It would have been a freakishly powerful thing to say. He chose not to, but he did allude to it. But I think, again, anybody who's worried about war right now, specifically nuclear war, is probably not a Clinton voter, because they can see what she said for herself. Altogether, I'd give this about 60-40 in favor of Trump. It wasn't a massive win, but it was at least as solid as the second debate, probably a little bit more, because he was honestly more on message. He seemed less frenetic, less of a bully, perhaps, to maybe the lame stream audience that was viewing. And altogether, his hits were more effective. They were fewer in number. There were times at which this debate was slightly boring, like the first debate, for short periods. But in between those short lulls, there was a lot of action, and the hits he made carried through a lot more. And because he was delivering them in a bit more of a coherent manner, even than the second debate and certainly than the first debate, I think they hit harder, that drives the message home more effectively. And people, honestly, they remember them more. What are people going to remember from this debate? They're Googling the Chicago riot, which means they're seeing O'Keefe's video. Which James O'Keefe, if he's taking ad revenue, and I wouldn't see it because I have ad blocking on my computer, if he's taking ad revenue, oh, he's getting money hand over fist just by having those videos on there. Not saying that's his primary goal, but that's a happy coincidence to what he probably made back enough already to pay for all of the investigative journalists he hired to do the whole fucking thing in the first place. So it must be helpful to him. WikiLeaks, meanwhile, is enjoying a little bit of a heyday because several times he pointed out their material. And again, Clinton's attempt to declare that WikiLeaks is conducting Russian espionage falls flat because there's no evidence of it, and there never has been. The only evidence that this is the case is a claim made by the Clinton campaign and Obama and some heads of like the FBI or the CIA that nobody trusts them. They're the heads of bureaucracies. They're utterly beholden to the executive branch. They're going to say what Obama wants them to say. Trust in the FBI is about as low as it could possibly be. So when they say, oh, yeah, it was the Russians, probably it causes more people to believe the opposite. Oh, well, I guess it wasn't the Russians because Comey says it was. Because nobody has any faith in them. The media is helpful in this too. Less than a third of Americans trust the media. Honestly, I'm surprised it's that high. Honestly, I think it should be 0%. Nobody should trust the legacy media after this election. But I'm going to look at the comments a little bit here. How many people are, oh, there's 4,700 people in the stream right now. Yeah. But yeah, my analysis in general, before I respond to anything here. Trump wins. He gets better attacks in. He also followed through with them more effectively than the last debate, honestly. The last debate, I gave him an edge. But in this one, it's more clear-cut, honestly. Clinton really didn't get in any attacks that she hasn't already used, too. And that may be another problem. Her pickings are rather limited. Trump supposedly is a failed businessman, which doesn't work, let's face it. Trump is unpresidential. Okay, well, we've heard that dozens of times at this point. And Trump talks about rigging. But because he brought up WikiLeaks and O'Keefe and all these other things, it begins to make his story look more coherent. It begins to make it look a little bit more true. And I'm actually going to block out the feed of myself there that's got a horrible lagging delay. It looks like shit. It's terrible. But yeah, I'm looking at the comments now, so I'll occasionally, yeah. All right, Bobby, don't talk. I don't mind if you troll there, but don't type in all caps, please. Okay? If you do it again, I'm going to take away your free speech, my boy. But yeah, I'll look through these. Keeping in mind, of course, that there are so many people in the feed that it's going to be difficult to actually get to any of the questions that people might ask. Will there be a war on November 8th? No, it's not going to be any war. Trump's playing up to his hardline fans when he says, oh, I'll keep you in suspense about whether I'll accept the election result. He's going to accept the election results. He doesn't give a crap. At this point, he's doing what he can. Clinton's doing what she can. The only difference is if Trump wins the election and he does appoint a special prosecutor, yeah, Clinton will probably go to prison. That's the only difference. But both of them will accept the results if they lose. There's no question in my mind. There's not going to be a civil war. There's not going to be mass chaos in the streets. At the most, you'll get small groups of people in a handful of cities that'll be pissed off. They'll get drunk or something like that. I've got a beer for later. I won't be getting drunk. Tell you this, don't ever play a political drinking game that involves you drinking alcohol when a candidate lies, because you'll die. You'll get alcohol poisoning. This doesn't matter. By the way, Trump too. You play that drinking game with him, he's deflecting constantly. You're going to get drunk. You play it with Hillary, you'll be dead within an hour. Rather, take a drink every time they tell the truth. If you're going to, I don't support or condone drinking games, but every time they tell the truth, then take a drink. You'll be pretty sober, honestly. You may get very slightly buzzed, and that's about it. And that's if you'd have to drink like Everclear just to get buzzed, honestly, if you were doing that. And that's any politician. And I know Trump's not a career politician, but he is entering politics. We have to keep that in mind. Trump is not your fucking messiah. He's not trying to be. He's not your savior. He's simply the candidate who doesn't apparently think it's a great idea to antagonize the only other major nuclear power in the world. And for that, I can give him respect. I think he's the better candidate. Much as I like Fallout, and I do occasionally fantasize about wandering through a radioactive wasteland, it also means no internet. Gardening would be a little harder. You know, I could garden at night because all my crops would glow in the dark. But at the same time, you know, dying of cancer when I'm 32, 33, that doesn't sound great to me, especially since there won't be any medical apparatus there. I'll have to put myself out of my misery. I'll chug the whiskey and I'll just blow my brains out if that happens, honestly. Oh, I got all these lumps all over my body. Must have been those mutated crops that I just ate. Huh, yeah. Sucks to be me. There's nobody to bury me. I guess the animals will have to pick my corpse apart. That's essentially what will end up happening. Yeah, I can listen to... well, I probably would be Three Dog. I'd set up a ham radio and I'd just play the most annoying, like, Fallout music 24/7. Be funny. Screw Henry Macau. He's that idiot who invented scruples, and now he blames women for all of his problems, and he married some foreign woman because everybody here detested him because he's so fucking atrocious. And the original gangster of MGTOW, basically. There's so many people here. My goodness. Probably, oh, there's 1,400 people in the stream now. Jesus. No. Yeah. But I'm just going to watch chat, and when on the odd occasion that I actually can fully read a question, I'll try to respond to it. Yeah. Oh, Trump's nasty woman quip towards the end. I thought that was not the greatest thing to do because, I mean, it's an interruption right towards the end of the debate when people will remember it the most. I don't think it hurts him, but anybody that already was sort of leaning against him because of his attitude, and they're not going to vote for him. It's a small group of people. Most people who dislike his attitude are already, like, at least soft Hillary Clinton supporters. I think that going after the media is a good thing. Going after career politicians is good. I'm surprised he didn't bring up his plan for term limits for Congress. That would have been a big winner. Congressional approval's lower than Hillary Clinton's trustworthiness rankings by a good 10, 15 points. It would have been a decent idea. I think the reason why he doesn't want to further alienate like Rubio or Cruz, it's actually funny. Did you notice? Paul Ryan, and all these other sort of establishment Republicans, they've all jumped back off of his campaign. Ted Cruz, who was the most reluctant to jump aboard, is still on his campaign. Imagine that. It wasn't Cruz the loser that decided to sell him out. It was little Paul Ryan. I will say this about little Marco, though. I think anybody who's from Florida, yeah, you should vote for Rubio. Little Marco and Marco Roboto, jokes aside, at least he's showing some decency here. But his comments regarding WikiLeaks were dead wrong. He's completely wrong. He's taken the bait. Unlike Trump, who all night long, Clinton tried to bait him, and he completely refused to take it. He didn't even nibble at it and then just socked her in the face. The only reason that she didn't absolutely get crippled is, again, Trump's speaking style is a little bit unhinged. But he was much more coherent this time around. So that's quite an advantage, actually. Honestly, it was quite subdued. At first, I thought it would be subdued throughout the entire debate. For the first segment, specifically the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court bullcrap, I thought it was going to be like the first debate. I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to have to sit through this and then pretend to care and pretend to analyze it like I actually gave a fuck about anything either of them said. Thankfully, it didn't disappoint. It was less frenetic than the last. I was hoping for more of a death match like debate 2, but it was exciting enough to watch. There were quite a few good attacks in there. I would appreciate perhaps if the frog swastikas could stop, because that gobbles up a lot of it. Not that I give a fuck myself for any moral reason, but it's gobbling up a lot of room in the chat, honestly. So if you could, not do that. Yeah. Could the electronic voting be rigged for Hillary? I don't personally believe so. Specifically because I have a feeling if anyone discovers any sort of plot holes there that they can exploit, somebody from the other side probably do the same. Um, I generally don't figure in fraud of that type within the general. The fraud we see, like in the O'Keefe videos, is an attempt to bus people from a reliably blue area, like Illinois, Chicago area, to a swing area, like Iowa. That's the real kind of fraud. And I pointed out in my last video, the lead up to this. People need to stop using the term voter fraud and start using the term electoral fraud, because in the public mind, they have totally different meanings. When you say there's mass voter fraud going on, people think that you're saying illegal immigrants are voting and dead people are voting. And that's not what these videos indicate. It's not what anybody in their right mind is even worried about at this point. They're worried about the fact that the DNC has been caught out, some of its operatives proven by their own statements on tape, unedited, as having attempted to commit this type of fraud, saying, oh yeah, we've been doing this for 50 years. Well, that's troublesome for the Democratic Party. And good on Trump for pointing this out in relation to the Chicago riots, because people, when they look this up, they're not just going to see that segment. They're also going to see the rest of the tape and probably the other part of the tape. Whoops, because a lot of them won't be supporting Hillary when they see that. But until now, they haven't had a reason to seek that material. They either didn't know who O'Keefe was, they didn't bother to watch the material because they're not quite so political, or they didn't know it existed, honestly. Yeah, I know that illegal immigrants can get driver's licenses, but that's not a problem. Because I believe that in most of these states, the driver's license specifically lists that fact. Therefore, it wouldn't be in a form of ID. Here in my state, by the way, I don't have to show any ID. I just show up and give them my name, grab my ballot, fill it out, and leave. And I've never heard any tales of voter fraud up here. Now, I know some of you say, well, that's because you're a homogeneously white state up there, or it's all like a bunch of hippies or something. Not completely. And again, there's no fraud up here. It just doesn't happen. I can't imagine why anyone who's not paid off and bust in specifically for that purpose, like what Fovel and his ilk were talking about on the O'Keefe tape. Why would they do that on their own accord? They're not getting anything in return. It's just one fucking vote. If they're that partisan, they probably already tried to bomb somebody at some point anyway, and they're probably in prison. Member of the Weather Underground or something. How does this debate affect the election outcome? I don't know. Because from my mind, Trump won. From the minds of, well, I mean, look at it this way. Every Clinton fan will say she won. Every Trump fan will say he won. It comes down to the undecided voters. I'm no longer in that block. I've decided who I'm going to vote for. I see Trump as having scored more hits, and I think that the snap polls will reflect that. But I could be wrong. And of course, they could cook their own polls. Although I think there's less of a chance of that. Again, yesterday night, with Anderson Cooper and all the others, I saw a glimmer of despair in their eyes when they were forced to report on O'Keefe's new work. I think that some of them know the gig might be up. I could be completely wrong, but I wouldn't expect them to cover so much for Clinton. And she actually didn't get softballed tonight, and that's the other problem. Unlike the previous moderators, Anderson Cooper, Lester Holt, Fox News isn't completely in the pocket of the Hillary campaign. Therefore, she actually got asked about the pay to play. She actually got asked about her emails. She actually got asked about WikiLeaks. She failed to deflect on every single one of these issues. It was clear, anybody watching who had an open mind, I think, saw that fact. And I think the media will end up reporting on it too, including the legacy media, which isn't great for her. Yeah, polls being BS. Some of them are. I now ignore, I've been ignoring Rasmussen since the last election because they showed Romney up by like 5 points or something. They were totally and utterly wrong. Karl Rove used to use that. And as soon as Karl Rove glommed onto Rasmussen, I said, well, I'm not going to trust those bastards anymore. And I was right not to, because they were completely wrong. Likewise, this time around, I'm ignoring CNN's polling. I'm ignoring NBC's polling. It's so out of step with all of the other available polling for the most part that I have to assume that their methodology itself is causing them to be perpetual outliers. If their methodology is correct, Clinton's supposedly up by 10 points. I don't believe it. I don't see it. I don't see it as reasonable, as within the realm of common sense, based on the situation as it is, that would be the case. I can't believe that wide a gap would exist under the current circumstances. I believe that they are indeed cooking their polls. That being said, Clinton is probably still ahead by a few points. ABC, which has shown no evidence of having cooked its polls, had her up by 4. That's a more reasonable lead for her at this moment. 10 points? No, I don't think so. Not in a million years. Any more than I believe the LA Times rolling average, by the way. They could be right. Could turn out that it could turn out that they're underestimating Trump's support. Last minute, 10 million extra voters show up for him at the polls, and he goes on to win, half of the leans blue states. But I can't count on that. I just can't. I can't predict what the bias will be in which direction, because either way, if I say, well, the polls are wrong heavily in Hillary's favor, it could be the other's true. If I say the polls are wrong and they're actually skewed towards Trump somehow, and she's actually knocked it out of the park and she's going to win like Texas, then I don't think that's the case, though. I don't think she's leading by 10. I don't think that it's a dead heat in Texas. I don't think she's going to win Arizona or Georgia. That ship sailed long ago. But at the same time, Trump does need to step up his game. Now, I operate from the estimation that he'll do that. So that's why I still give him an advantage. Yeah. Now, Evan McMullen's not a Clinton plan. Evan McMullen is just some goofball who wants to make a name for himself. He's not really running for the presidency. He's running for name recognition. He's probably hoping to be like, what was that old dude who ran in 2008, I think, as a Republican? Fred Thompson or something. He died recently, and he used to do like gold commercials or something. It was always on Fox. They always have commercials for gold or power wheelchairs, which shows the age of their average audience, I guess. I can't remember who exactly it was. Yeah. Oh, as for Victoria 2, funny story and true. I fucked up on my Victoria 2 campaign, so I can't finish the campaign. I recorded the next part of it, and all was well. Germany was doing all right. I think I invaded Yemen, and that's basically all I did during that video to stave off militancy. But like an idiot, I saved it before realizing that the recording had no audio. So the entire part was completely worthless, and now, of course, it's already been saved, so I can't actually make that part. So I'm going to not be able to finish the Vicky 2 campaign. I'm going to start a new one. I'm looking into getting some patches and mods and so forth. Something to make the game more functional, not having to screw with it constantly. The historical mod or something like that. So that's all I'll say about that. This video is about, politics, not Vicky 2. The moderator did fine. He didn't show any systemic bias in either direction. I think some of the Clinton fans will go after him for cutting Clinton off and then saying it was Trump's turn. I do believe a few tens of seconds early at one point. They'll probably gobble him up for that. And when the snap polls show, oh, well, Hillary didn't do particularly well, they'll say, oh, well, it's the moderator's fault. They'll actually pull a Trump with Lester Holt in the first debate sort of act. It'll be very funny to see coming from them. No, Trump won't withdraw the U.S. from NATO. He just wants to force our NATO partners to pay more based on their overall economic size or their contribution, I guess, which makes sense. It's just a fair arrangement. NATO was never meant to be the U.S. and its satellite states. It was meant to be an alliance of nations, specifically pledged against the USSR, which no longer exists. And reformatting NATO, which is what he actually suggested, does make sense because there is no USSR. There's Russia now. Russia's abilities are more limited. Much of what was once its population and land area now bitterly hates the Russian state and refuses to do anything with it other than like Belarus or Belarus or however it's pronounced. Maybe the Kazakhs over there with Borat or something like that. A lot of the Ukrainians largely are opposed to Russia. People in the Baltic states, Finland even more. So yeah, it's a totally different story. NATO does need to change the way that it does business for a new century. Uh, how can anyone argue against abortion? Well, some people believe that a baby is a life, specifically a fetus, before it's born. I say I don't care because I can't know from any moral, subjective standpoint whether that's the case. But I can know that the mother is a life and is a citizen who has certain rights. I don't see it as the government's role to involve itself with moral dilemmas. That's how we get shitty laws like prohibition or the drug war or anything, or gun control. Gun control is a moral issue. Oh, we got to protect the white former slave owners from these black citizens getting guns and going after them. That's the reason why the first gun control was passed. Look at the Cruikshank decision that thankfully was overturned by the same Supreme Court decision, Heller, that was mentioned tonight. It's that simple. I just don't trust the government to make medical decisions. That's also why I'm against Obamacare. I don't think there should be a healthcare mandate. I think it's retarded. It's stupid. Well, you call it killing. I call it terminating a pregnancy. I don't see the fetus, I don't see as a citizen. That's just the way I am. I can't bring myself to see that. Honestly, I disagree with Trump on his position here. And I disagree with the majority of the U.S. population. The majority of the U.S. doesn't like the idea of abortion. I understand that. They support it only in cases of rape, incest, and when the mother's life is in danger. Those are overwhelmingly supported. I think it's like 85% of the population. The idea of terminating a pregnancy for other reasons, even before 5 months, is not particularly popular. A small majority oppose it. In the case of late term, the vast majority oppose it. I understand that I'm in a tiny minority of people who doesn't care whether a woman has a late term abortion, but I don't care. Because I can only know from an objective standpoint that the woman has constitutional rights as a citizen. I can't know that about the fetus because the founders said nothing about fetuses. It's a cut and dry issue for me. If the founders didn't say anything about this issue, therefore I should err on the side of personal liberty. That personal liberty extends to citizens. I know the woman is a citizen, but it's a recursive argument there because I don't know the fetus is a citizen. So to say it's a life and therefore abortion should be outlawed and the government specifically should enforce this, again, you also have a different argument, which is pragmatism. There were times in our past where abortion was illegal and it didn't work. People still got abortions. What they would do is puncture their cervix and then they'd say, oh, well, I'm miscarrying, I need an abortion. Then it's a health emergency and it was legal. Or they'd go to Canada or Mexico to get an abortion, or they'd take a bunch of herbs and they'd miscarry and sometimes suffer severe complications. Millions of women died during that period of time. It didn't work because it's a form of prohibition. So I don't have any problem with abortion. It's saving lives. You may not think so. I happen to disagree with you. Now, Sue Minter or Phil Scott, neither of the bastards. Sue Minter is off her rocker. All she wants to do is enact gun control. She apparently doesn't care about any other issue under the sun. And Phil Scott, just a Republican light. He was a Shumlin ally. He did everything Shumlin told him to do. I may not even cast a vote for governor. I may vote for myself. Honestly, I may write myself in as governor. I think Phil Scott will win. I don't see a whole lot of support for Sue Minter. I see a lot of support for Phil Scott. Now remember, Rutland is the centerpiece of Vermont within politics. We're the swing state region of a state that's otherwise heavily blue. We're the bellwether of how the state's going to vote. I'm seeing a massive amount of support for Phil Scott and other Republican down ballot candidates. I think many of them will win handily. Oddly enough, one of my high school teachers is actually running for some position. I can't remember which one. I'll vote for her, even though she's a Democrat. I mean, it's a meaningless position. Who cares? As far as governor, no, I think Phil Scott will win handily. It may be preferable to Minter only because she's obsessed with gun control, aka disarmament. So we got to get rid of assault rifles because Vermont's got such a prevalent gun crime problem. One person shot every, 10 months or something like that. Systemic gang violence in the state of Vermont. Most of our problem is heroin, just like New Hampshire. And on this, by the way, Trump is also correct. I've met people that are all screwed up on heroin or pills. Almost always it's some sort of opiate addiction. I've known people personally who have been like that, who are all sorts of three sheets to the wind constantly, totally addicted to this stuff. He is correct. Part of that is because these things pour across the border. They're not originating here, and nobody's growing a bunch of opium fields here in Vermont and creating a bunch of heroin. It's just not happening. It's coming from somewhere. It's coming from the Middle East that Clinton helped destabilize. So that opium production skyrocketed because, of course, the Mujahideen, funded by the neocons and neoliberals, forced people to grow opium so that they could sell it and get rich and then fund their weapons programs. It's just the way that things work. Yeah, working for children and families. Like anybody believes that Clinton is interested in saving children when she wants to start an atomic war. I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, Trump did perfectly fine, and he basically solved the Putin issue. Oh yeah, I condemn it. I condemn any foreign interference in our elections, but she has no clue who's hacking. And he's right. They don't. The intelligence agencies either really don't know, and they're just pretending that they know that it's Russia, or they're doing it for a political reason, and they know full well that they're lying to the American people. I don't believe it one bit. I don't believe that Assange is associated with Russia in any way because WikiLeaks has dumped files on Russia. They also went after the Bush regime back when Bush was a friend of the Russians. So it's a little bit mysterious how they're making this claim. It looks like McCarthyism. I half expected Trump to remark on that. Oh, well, Clinton looks a little bit like Joe McCarthy tonight or something. Would have been hilarious. But yeah, 60-40 split for Trump. A solid debate performance, not like a complete total thrashing of Clinton, but he did better than the last debate by a little bit. Maybe a 62-38 split or something. A little bit more generous there. So pretty good, honestly. On the first question, because it was kind of low-key and boring, for a while I thought, oh, well, it's going to be boring. It's going to be like the first debate. It'll basically be a stalemate. It turned out not to be like that, though. It got a lot more heated as the night went on. Yeah, uranium won. I'm not making a prediction of who will win. I'm saying Trump has the advantage based on what I see, all things considered, despite being behind, yes, in the polling, and he is. I'm not going to talk about rigged polling other than, yeah, I've begun ignoring CNN and NBC's polls. ABC has him down by 4. That seems logical to me. I'm assuming that that's roughly correct. It's somewhere between him down by 4 and them roughly tied. Part of this is due to the fact that I do believe there will be a bump in support for Trump at the end among people who simply don't want to admit they support Trump. But yes, his performance tonight was solid, which is what he needed. And going forward, we've got 3 different groups of people offering more and more leaks constantly. WikiLeaks is going to keep dumping. You're going to keep getting O'Keefe material, and then some claim that the 33,000 emails are there, as well as a Drudge has threatened to expose some sort of sexual scandal involving Hillary Clinton. I'm going to assume that that's tabloid stuff myself, but it's possible. All these different people are trying to take her campaign out. Yeah, playing Victoria 2 is Krakow. You better hope that you get medicine first. Yeah. Yeah, WikiLeaks and Veritas both have serious stuff. They've already been dumping it now for quite some time. Both of the videos O'Keefe has released have gone completely viral. They've seeped into the mainstream media fairly handily at this point, and they've driven millions and millions of views collectively. WikiLeaks dumps have unleashed an absolute, you saw it at the debate. If the legacy media didn't find the content of the WikiLeaks revelations important, why would they be asking about it at the debate? The answer is they realize that it's important. It's just that Fox, perhaps, has a little bit less reprehension about releasing that material, making the public aware that there has been a leak going on. CNN didn't like to talk about it, MSNBC and so forth, Salon or Business Insider. Half of these groups aren't even really news orders anymore. They're just corporate so-called media. Yeah, it was almost surreal to see Russia mentioned so often in the debate. Once again, Clinton has managed to convince quite a few people that the Russians are coming. It's Red Scare all over again. Well, if that's the case, then I would think that running a no-fly zone in Syria is probably the last thing that you want to do, because it'll probably lead to an atomic conflict. She didn't answer the question, by the way, in any proper sense. When she was asked, oh, well, what happens under a Clinton presidency if you run the no-fly zone in Syria and a Russian aircraft intrudes? She said, oh, well, we're not going to start it right away, planning. She said she wants a no-fly zone. It's either a no-fly zone or it's not a no-fly zone. That means the situations be one of two things if the Russians intrude into a no-fly zone. I'll tell you this unequivocally. Either the Russian plane gets fired upon, probably starting an atomic conflict, or at the very least a Cuban Missile-style standoff in the process. People would be headed for their basements, trust me. Or it's going to be just like Obama's red line in Syria, which will get crossed over and over, and nobody will do a goddamn thing about it. I lean towards the latter, honestly. If she were to establish a no-fly zone, I think that any advisor in their right mind would say, take the political hit and just get the fuck out, because the Russians aren't playing around. And because while we have the projective force to completely cripple the entire region, we don't want to start a nuclear war. And so she would come away with a huge amount of egg on her face, and probably a little bit of shit too. I wish that people would stop posting large swastikas in the commenting area. It's really flooding chat. I mean, I'm just going to assume that you're a Hindu, so I'm glad that you're blessing me with like good luck under the auspices of Ganesha. I appreciate that, but it's taking up quite a bit of room in the comments area. So if you could please not. Yeah. Yes, Trump was on Epstein's plane. So was Bill Clinton. So who cares? All right, I'm Swastika Dude. You post it one more time and I'm banning you. From the username, I'm going to assume no longer that you are a Hindu poster. I think Trump won the debate. Yeah, post the little ones. Okay. All right. Well, if you're going to keep posting them. Yeah, I don't like to, I'm just going to put you in a timeout. I'm not going to block you. But seriously, can you stop? No, I'm not going to ban people. I'll just put them in timeout. Oh, yeah. There's Vlad. You're in a timeout too. I'm going to spank your behind, boy. No, I'm not banning them. I believe in free speech. I just wish you wouldn't clutter up the commentary. I'm trying to respond to people here a little bit. That's the only problem that I have. I don't care if you post swastikas. Just do it in, do it in regular text. Do the little swastikas if you want to post that stuff. But yeah, Clinton didn't perform here's the sum up. Clinton was Clinton. We've already seen her at the first and second debate. Trump was different. He mixed things up. His strategy changes over time in accordance with what he observes in the prior debates, which is what he should be doing. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to get drawn into a big long spiel about this. Okay. Yeah, I'm asking you to please stop. You do realize I'm on your side, but you don't seem to understand that. Yeah, my freedom of speech. Other people are trying to speak too. That's like going to a Trump rally and trying to get somebody to punch you, honestly. Try to go through here. Yeah. Hillary's big deflection on open borders. You could tell she was nervous about having to answer this question. She's asked, oh, well, what about hemispheric open borders? You said that you wanted this yourself in your own words in one of these leaked emails. Oh, it was about energy. It's about building a power grid. Yeah, okay. Yeah, how are you going to run those lines across the Panama Canal? Okay. You're going to run it through the Amazon. There's going to be a whole lot of high-tension lines running through the Brazilian rainforest. Oh, yeah, and over the Andes Mountains. Okay, this makes so much sense. Okay, Hillary, I believe you. I don't fucking think so. Had nothing to do with energy. Energy's one component. Yeah, she wants energy sharing. She also probably wants a single currency like the EU. She wants open borders, as in I could go to any of these Latin American states or Canada. No visa, no problem. Common system, probably some level of common laws, which means we'd have more censorship here. It's a terrible idea. By the way, I don't have a problem with the idea of people being able to travel more easily between these countries. I really don't, including staying for longer periods of time. But you do have to have a border. Other countries appear to understand this. It's been a long-standing human tradition for basically as long as we've had the ability to quarry little bricks or rocks or anything like that. Early on, mankind made a barrier between himself and the outside world by wearing a skin. And that's where the idea started. It's about excluding something you don't want in contact with you. I don't care if anybody in the world comes here as a tourist. I also, by the way, and I'll say this again, I don't care about illegals who are doing nothing else wrong but being here illegally. They're the least of my concerns. But the idea of keeping out, drug cartels, terrorists, yeah, it's a pretty good idea. I think maybe we should try building a barrier to make it a little bit harder for them to get across the border, because right now, large stretches of our border are chain link fence. Some good that does. You can drive right through it with a bulldozer, and you think a drug lord can't afford it if they really have the inclination to do so. You can tunnel under it really easily too. If it's so hard to cross the border with all these supposed fancy techs that go, oh, we've got sensors that can detect if you're drilling underneath the border. Well, then how do people keep drilling underneath the border? I would have thought you would have caught them all by now. Oh, our drones can see anyone coming across. Well, it doesn't help if the border agents can't apprehend them now, can it? That's a little bit of a problem. Oh, no, I see another swastika poster here. Yeah, the big ass Trump signs block things off a little bit too. But like I said, I don't have any moral qualms with what you're posting. I'm concerned about the width of your actual commenting area being so large it bumps other people off. That includes the Trump posting there, please. Yeah. I'm in a pro-gun state. Vermont's the only heavily blue pro-gun state that there is. We resisted Bloomberg's attempts to import New York-style gun control here successfully. He was laughed out of the state. He spent $1 million to try to get gun control implemented here, and it went nowhere. They tried again. It went nowhere. They tried again. It went nobody cares in this state, including the Democrats. We've got the most gun-friendly Democrats in the country. Even Bernie Sanders. Why do you think that at the first debate he said, oh, I'm not really on board with gun control? It's because he knows that it's not necessary. He knows that it doesn't do anything, number one, and he knows that in most cases it makes the situation worse, number two. There's a whole lot of swastikaing going on in that chat room. Yeah, exactly. Did anyone catch that? Good point. She never once denied that she was connected with paying off of those protesters to go start shit at Trump rallies. She deflected and started talking about conspiracy theories. What does this indicate in human psychology? It indicates that she is connected with this. She knew it was going on. That may become a problem because it's possible that O'Keefe has evidence that that's the case. Maybe for a moment there, when she started looking a little bit tipsy and tired, not long after that was brought up, actually, maybe that's why. Maybe she knows what O'Keefe's waiting for next. It's always possible. It's also possible Trump knows. That might be why he's so smug at times. And he is, honestly. You can see it in his face. They gave Hillary more time to talk. I thought the moderation was just, it was completely fair this time. All right, that swastika is not even made properly. That's like horrifically formatted. There's something seriously wrong there. You screwed up the blocks that are composing it. Yeah. What did I think about the bad hombres comment he made? A dog whistle to his core fans. Honestly, to the alt-right. But then again, Clinton's not going to point out, oh, there you go using Mexican slurs again, because then he'd bite back with, oh, just using a term everybody uses to talk about bad guys. Haven't you ever watched a cowboy movie? So she couldn't do anything with it. I think that people got the hint, though, the intonation of what he said. Yeah. How long have I been streaming here anyway? I don't even know. It tells me on the Hangouts page. Apparently not. How very odd. It's 11:40. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna head on off of the stream though, because I've already done the analysis. yeah, people saying, "Oh, Hillary won." Some of them are trolling. Some of them are CTR posters, and some of them are probably confused. Maybe they tuned into The Simpsons or something, and they thought they were watching the debate. But yeah, Trump won the debate fairly well, not by an enormous margin. It wasn't like, again, like the second debate where he had the edge for most of the debate. It wasn't like a Pence-Kane matchup where Pence just totally decimates him off the face of the earth. It was more of a measured victory, but he followed through with his attacks much more effectively than he did before. That's probably the big takeaway in terms of potentially regaining momentum. That was important. That was probably the most important thing he did all night, is actually follow through for once with his attacks in such a coherent manner that they'd actually be understood, that people would Google what he was talking about thereafter. No, Hillary didn't win. Hillary did what she did at the last two debates, which is be boring. Her attacks are not as well thought out. She deflected half a dozen different times when questioned on her scandals. That makes her look dishonest. That's the whole point. The problem, it's her biggest problem with her campaign. If she was generally rated as honest, she'd be 20 points ahead of Trump right now, probably. And or if the economy were going a little bit better. But she hasn't been honest. That's the problem. And it's getting worse, not better. Yeah, Hillary won all three debates, idiot. There are people who unironically think that. It's actually very funny. But yeah, I'm going to log off at this moment. I've got to get some food up in me because I'm getting hungry, honestly. It's Rubio. Yeah, just think, after November 8th, no more like debate live streams or anything. Yeah. But I will tell you this, on the 8th, really quick here before I sign off. On the 8th, as soon as I'm done voting, I'm going to pile a bunch of I'll set up shop probably somewhere else. I'm just going to have I'm going to have snacks. I'm going to have everything else all in front of me, and I'm going to enjoy myself and probably stream most of the day, but it'll be on and off. I'll have a little placard that I can put in front of the webcam feed. Oh, taking a break, got to go take a piss. Taking a break, got to go, I don't know, eat ringdings or something like that. That's probably what I'll do. So yeah, I'm going to log off at the moment, but I hope you all enjoyed the live stream. That's about all. Peace out.